Reading through of my script. The internet is an extremely convenient tool for learning new things. It has a simple user interface. Type what you want to learn about and click on any resulting links. And then I would have usually something in this general region where I would want visuals, and I'll indicate where I'd want to cut. It makes quenching curiosity easy as that. God knows how many debates I've ended between my parents when I turned to Google. However, the internet is a double-edged sword. Because of the various kinds of websites that the internet supports, one can learn a single piece of information in multiple ways. As I've come to understand, there are 3 general schools of thought on how one does this online learning. They are vegging out learning, evidence learning, and skill learning. Let's briefly look at all of these schools of thought and see how one should approach them. This is where I would cut, and I would probably be from a different shot as soon as I hold this phone in a stable position, probably from a tripod. Vegging out learning is perhaps one of the original poster child purposes of the public internet. If you have a simple random question on your mind, you can search it up on the internet. Like with my parents, I do this to fact check a bunch. And these are typically quick questions with short, concrete answers that are often quantified in some way. A defining point of vegging out learning is that it's a sort of kind of entertainment. We take a sort of pleasure or amusement in learning new things when we are wandering online. However, as a fun and relaxing this laid-back learning might be, it must be carefully handled, especially if you want to use this information you learn outside in future endeavors, especially if you did not take much time to check to see if the information is correct. Evidence learning is the second school of thought, and for anyone who has taken a high school English class, you know what this is. It's what you do when you're looking for sources to use for your research paper. Typically, these sources are used for building arguments from evidence within them, hence the name, evidence learning. Such sources often include informational websites, online articles, or electronic journal issues. While evidence learning requires a person to put more thought and effort into than vegging out learning, it's still vulnerable to similar weaknesses. The first is not checking the credibility of the info source. If the website is a promotional site or for some sort of product, there might be some bias on the company's side of the claims. In general, one should pay attention to the domain. .com is typically not as reliable as public official sources, such as the domains of .edu or .gov or .org, though it's not a strict rule. The second weakness is more often dangerous, cherry picking. Sometimes information found in a source one might want does not exactly fit their expectations. This may result in a person unconsciously or worse, consciously ignoring that source and search for sources that agree within your expectations. The key to overcoming these vulnerabilities is to pay attention to where the information comes from and to consider whether your biases affect what you're looking at. The final school of thought, unlike the other schools of thought, is much more start-end oriented, skill learning. When you are doing online learning like this, you are typically trying to accomplish a physical something. These somethings can be anything, like learning how to pay your taxes, how to cook an expensive-looking cake, or how to get to your grandmother's house. A common word which you will hear or think to yourself when you're doing this kind of learning is the word how. Within the internet, many people can publish their own do-it-yourself instructions for billions of people to see. Sites that are built for such things are things like Instructables, GitHub, or WikiHow. However, as is the case with other schools of thought in online learning, is the credibility factor. While you're doing skill learning, it's important to keep in mind that much of what they might be seeing in not be official instructions for doing their tasks. Failure to not see this might lead to inflicting harm, sometimes physical, if the task is physical. Okay. No, Timmy, you may not build a time machine from a toaster. I don't care if you heard that from Creeper67 online. You're not doing it. I just said a lot of words, so let's zoom out a bit. As we have just explored, there are it's important to understand how you're doing the online learning because the method determines how you're using that information. When you're researching for online information, here are some easy ways to determine how you are researching. If you are looking up something like a question which has a quantifiable short answer, and or you have no future use for the information, then you're probably doing vegging out learning. If you're citing quotes, images, or data from your sources, you're most likely doing evidence learning. If you're looking up instructions for to answer a question like how to, you are probably doing skill learning. Every kind of learning has its strengths or weaknesses, and hopefully this analysis will help you learn how to learn smarter when surfing the net. Insert visual of me surfing away. All right, that concludes my rough draft reading through.